Live. And we are live. All right. Welcome, guys. To everyone in the conversation, we'll start everything in about a minute or so, just to let folks filter in from around the world before we get started. But before we kick it off, gentlemen, good to see you. Welcome. And how's life on your ends?
All good over here.
Yeah, same here. All good too.
You're also all good.
Yeah. Prabal Banerjee. He's got the what?
Prabal's got the standing desk operation over there.
I know. He's looking down on us.
He's focusing on health these days. Too much coding.
Yeah, probably always good seeing you guys. Saint, really awesome to connect with you, man.
Yeah.
Love it. Let's do it live. Andy, are you still catching sun and waves in South America?
One last hurrah until ETC. So taking it all in.
Oh, dude, man, can't believe you're hanging up the hat, but good for you.
Yeah.
And Saint, what about you, man? What part of the world are you in, if you don't mind sharing? And if not, no worries.
Okay, I'm in Nigeria. I'm in Nigeria, Africa. I'm based in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria as well.
Awesome. Right on.
Yeah.
I'm in the humble and not so fun Texas, where it's already like 35 degrees Celsius and humid. So good times. All right, I think we've got quorum. People are flowing in. So let's kick things off. Welcome to our amazing guests, as well as the fantastic crowd listening from around the globe, either live or via recording in the future. My name's Kyle Rojas. I lead the business team for the Avail ecosystem. I'm really lucky to be joined by three incredible guests repping a few different parts of the industry. And today we're going to talk about all things modularity, pieces of the modular tech stack, as well as dive into how and why the Bitcoin layer 2 world is really taking shape. But let's start by learning about all of you amazing folks with some introductions, who you are, what you did before we all fell down the crypto rabbit hole, and of course, what you're all doing now. If it's okay, just for coordination's sake, we'll start with Saint, then move on to Andy, and Prabal can bring up the rear.
All right. Yeah, sure. So yeah, I came into crypto in 2021, although I've been there since 2019, but there is nothing like DeFi Saint isn't existing then. So I've just been there, So I first experienced the bear market during the COVID-19 with the bull market and the rest. So yeah, but what really brought me into crypto was then because I studied mechatronics engineering in the university. So then I was doing my car design stuff. I wanted to be a car designer. So I had no interest in crypto then. So when I was making research about the universities to study, so I was checking so many schools out there. Yeah, but the major barrier that I had was the tuition fees. So the tuition fees was so high for 2 years master. So I was like looking, where can I get this huge amount of money? And funding of life over there isn't easy and the rest. So, and I can't really forfeit that of my dream. So yeah, that was now made me to come into crypto. So then, yeah, I think around the bull market, I made some money then. So I was like, wow, this is good. This is good. So like, I'm going to make a decent chunk to further my masters and the rest. So after a while, the bear market came. I totally lost everything. I made about 30K plus then. The first time I lost everything, like my life was in a mess then. I was like, wow, whoa, like what can I do? Like I now tried finding means to raise it back. So then I came on Twitter, then I was seeing the likes of DeFi Edge and some of the other top guys then. So I was reading, wow, I don't even really know that there is more to this industry that I was seeing out there. So I wanted to even know the reason, what happened, why I lost my money and the rest. So after finding out, so I started looking for ways to make it back. So I checked. I was like, wow, I didn't even have any skills. So then I started researching about what to do from there, I was like, oh, this writing is going to suit me. So I was looking at what other guys are doing. Then I haven't known Andy and some few other guys. So it was like DeFi Edge, Rootify, and some of them, NFT God. So then I started writing from there. So yeah, I picked up, got my first partnership. I don't remember the protocol again. So yeah, I made some few bucks then. I was like, wow, this industry is interesting. So, but my aim still remained to make up money to further my master's. So along the line, I was like, caught uninterested again with the whole master stuff. I was like, wow, this, I think I should have been here. Like, yeah, this is it. So I kept on going then. So I later got a job with Chromatica, which is my first official job, which I'm still a core contributor for them. So I wrote their first white paper. Then I was still in university during my final years when I was writing my exams. I wrote their first white paper. So after that, I kept on working. So during that, I was even writing my newsletter then, which was focusing on layer 2s then. Modularity hasn't been hitting up. It was just layer 2s. So I was doing that on the DeFi Saint. So later, after the Optimism Retro PDF round 3 grant, so I got it. Wow, like it motivated me more to delve deep into this area. So yeah, Modularity started hitting up. So from there, I now founded Layer 2M because yeah, I found like my audience really liked what I was doing. So there, I founded Layer 2M, and that's what I've been doing from now till till today.
Love it. Right on.
Yeah.
Nice. Honestly, like that story is just insane. I feel extremely grateful for just what my story is, and just kind of opening my eyes a bit there. So life has some weird ways of showing you things. But yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in crypto since I heard about it early 2017. My buddy was skipping the university parties, staying in. He was trading coins on leverage. Found out about that and just kind of went down the rabbit hole through 2017 onwards. Ended up dropping out of school. Did some other online businesses in the marketing realm. Started to grow a Twitter account, and then just kind of stumbled back upon with my co-founder on the Rollup, Robbie now, and we kind of reconvened after previously meeting in the Bitcoin Club freshman year of college. Started what was DeFi Slate then, podcast education in early 2020, late 2019. Now we are the Rollup, focusing a lot on rollups, modularity. Excited to ask Prabal some tough questions if I get the chance. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's my turn now. This is the least interesting of all those stories. I had a very academic background, started cryptography more than crypto around 2013, 2012, 2013. When I started reading about cryptography, it hooked me up. Even before that, tried fiddling with some things, but didn't make anything good out of it. After that, just pursued some of that theoretical computer science knowledge and so on. Started pursuing a full-blown cryptography and security PhD. Did research for 4 years. Doing that, came across a lot of different things, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the likes. So that journey started 2016. After that, dropped out of my PhD program to join Polygon, which was Matic back then. And then, yeah, that's how my industry journey started. Led research at Polygon, then spun Avail off with Anurag to create a separate entity.
Awesome. I love it. I love that we're repping 4 continents right now, coming from all different time zones, all different backgrounds. So cool. This space is amazing. All right, let's get into some meaty topics, and we'll start on modularity. Probably, I think you'd be best to start here, and I'd love if you could give a quick rundown on the history of modularity, and then how and why it's come about, if you could share.
Yeah, I think it's very tightly knit with the history of blockchains. At least that's how I view it. So if you think about the Bitcoin, the revolution that came with it, the different culmination of novel theories which came together to create what we know as Bitcoin today, it was just awesome. And at that point in time, we were creating a different type of stack, which enabled these decentralized peer-to-peer applications to come forth. But it had severe limitations because it was only about transfer of money, and that's where Ethereum came and shone light, like how you can build decentralized applications which are Turing complete logic running on top of this entire network. And that paved the way for all of the things that we know right now, including DeFi and Rollup and so on, right? So that was the rough journey. Modularity was there already. It was already being talked about how we can, separate out different parts of that stack. But I think one of the major breakthroughs there was how we can separate out consensus from the executional logic. So from when that came about, that it was not a single day journey. It was through multiple iterations of such. Like the main problem that we were facing in the blockchain industry was that of scaling. And if you can see like things like Lightning Network on Bitcoins already taking shape, and they were also trying to do something similar. They were trying to do multitude of transactions off chain and then settle together on chain. That was the way in which the entire industry was moving. Ethereum started with a execution sharding roadmap, and soon realized that execution sharding is harder to do on the base layer, but rather the scaling should be done on data availability, whereas executions could be categorized into rollups as we know of them today. So they entered a rollup centric roadmap, and I think that formed the journey for modular architectures. There were many other brilliant work done by, let's say, Mustafa and Vitalik. So they also did very fantastic fundamental work on that. So kudos to them to theoretically capture all of that and start the work. But I think soon many client execution engines to consensus engines to the entire merge and the shift towards a multi-client architecture, a multi-layered architecture, the roll-up centric roadmap, the execution sharding roadmap, all of this came about. And I think that was the birth of modularity. I think Andy can show a different view of how he has seen modularity, and probably Saint also can show a more financial or a DeFi aspect of it. But that is how I think that modularity was coming about in this industry.
Yeah, Andy, saying anything you bring in there, as well as the question we should all be asking is, do we even need modular structures, right? Do we even need modularity in general? So any thoughts on the history or the need to push forward with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like during DeFi summer, the congestion on Ethereum mainnet was just, it was so good for this short period of time where it was like, okay, maybe we could all just hang out on Ethereum and life's going to be good. And then I think that it got to a point where like Solana came about, and that was like, okay, this very fast throughput chain. It was very kind of young at that point. And previously we had all these kind of like Ethereum killers, but none of them really caught on from like a actual on-chain interaction perspective. Like it was all Ethereum at first, but then it was very, very obvious that that Ethereum L1 wasn't going to scale. And I think we're getting to the point now, which I'm curious on Prabal's take on this as well. Like, is Ethereum L1 even worth it for builders to build apps anymore? Should we just kind of put in our head, okay, Ethereum L1 should just be used of settlement for proofs, settlement of kind of roll-ups and kind of other chains to Ethereum, and just kind of ditch the idea of interacting on Ethereum? And I think that's kind of this gradual spectrum where we've came from like, let's all interact on L1 or a single chain, to now we have all of these roll-ups. And so for me, like going to Polygon to late 2020, I'm like experiencing that okay, this is like a side chain, a roll-up. It's kind of this different technical architecture, but it's much cheaper, it's faster, it's a better experience. That kind of was like the first, like, okay, roll-ups are going to happen. And then I think after Vitalik kind of dropped that roll-up centric roadmap perspective and that post, I think paved the way. That kind of even more forwarding to even in the last year, I think that we saw quite a bit of teams wanting to experiment more. I think ideas that like sovereignty kind of came into play, where if I'm an app on Ethereum, for example, I don't want to have to deal with like this noisy neighbor problem, or even scaling that up to like the bigger airdrops of the L2s, Arbitrum, Optimism, etc. We even saw these chains get clogged. So we've gone from like scaling Ethereum, then we've gone from like, okay, rollups. Okay, now we've even scaled rollups further. So there's these app chains and, you know, using data availability layers. And then I think kind of now where we go next is experimenting more on like the execution front. And so, yeah, for me, I've kind of just seen this progressive nature of scale, which I think Prabal hit on quite a bit. And so as we keep unlocking more ideas, more builders, more use case, more funding, I think this like it just becomes a quest to continue to scale. And so that's kind of how I've looked at it over the past couple of years.
Yep. Saint, anything you'd add from like your research on layer 2 side, and any feedback you've gotten from the projects building in this space?
Yeah, of course. Adding to what Prabal and here said, you know, so I've been there in the space. So like I told you in the earlier days, so modularity hasn't been the buzzword then. It hasn't really been hitting up. So it was just the layer ones there. I think during the DeFi summer, so many layer ones, oh, this one will come, the Ethereum killer, you know, yeah. But after all, Ethereum is still there. So but there are some issues that needs to be solved on that base layer. So as a result of scalability, so rollups came as the execution layers, but that was still not enough. You know, so there kept on being so many problems, you know. So when modularity now come, it's all about optionality, specialty, having different components, you know, to help in easier scaling of these solutions out there. So starting with saving cost, we have out these alternative data layers, just like what we've seen, Celestia, Avail, DeFi, and the rest. So we have some other components as proving. We have some other components as framework, you know, so many of them. So modularity gives the optionality to build whatever you want. So even without relying on the constraints of the L1, just like we have even come to see different versions of VMs and also seeing sovereign rollups. Yeah, so I feel like modularity is really here to stay.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there in the developer optionality, or just optionality in general. One reason Ethereum succeeded so much is because the amount of dev tooling it has out there. And the more modular tooling, the more likely we'll see your experimentation, and the more experimentation, more innovation, the more likely things are to succeed. So I think it's really cool. And that goes to the next point. I mean, there's so many different pieces of the modular stack. And this is just with it is a fairly new phenomenon. I bet we haven't even come close to seeing the last of the new and innovative technologies to come out in the space. Can someone explain, maybe from a high level, all of the different Lego pieces of a modular stack? And Andy, you have a really high level view. You might be best to provide that bird's eye view of the entire playing field here. You have some really good materials out there with different portions. So can you talk about modular landscape and all the different components people are building with?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I mean, at the core level, you know, we started with like a single state machine, a monolithic design, or some call them integrated. And then somewhere along a mix of our three stories here, we decided, okay, we're going to break these apart, right? And so we got to where we are today, which is kind of like this modular stack, which is the separation of the execution, which we've talked about for Ethereum, is going into rollups. And just kind of separating execution from the other parts. Then you've got the data availability and consensus. Obviously, Ethereum has just pushed through the 10-kun upgrade. So Ethereum is increasing its data availability capabilities. We have teams like Avail, DeFi, Celestia, Near, et cetera, working on providing quality data availability solutions to the marketplace. Then we have the settlement layer, which is effectively for all intents and purposes, Ethereum, but I think that we've seen quite a few implementations, like Avalanche has subnets, and Anisha and Dimension are kind of working on their own settlement layers, and we'll see various different roll-up stacks. So at its core, it was monolithic being separated into execution, data availability, and consensus, and the settlement layer. But kind of going forward, like I expect this to kind of expand into even more, and just some ideas that I have. I think some of these roll-up frameworks and RAS providers will start to offer you those choices. But then I also expect to see like proving networks, ZK coprocessors, shared sequencer networks, even like in-house or out-of-the-box interoperability providers, as well as potentially like other like oracles and middleware things. So I kind of expect this to like expand, and then I also expect the stack to get like ZKified. I think that you guys are on board with this vision as well, where I think a lot of the parts of the stack would be better if they were more verifiable and based on ZK. And so I think those two trends will happen, but that's kind of the broad view as I'm seeing it for the space now.
Prabal, Saint, anything you'd add there?
Yeah, of course. So I'm starting from, where Andy stopped. So like he was talking about the monolithic, so there was some bottleneck experienced in the monolithic design of blockchain, just like Ethereum, having the whole layer do everything with the execution, data availability, and consensus, then the settlement layer. So then came modularity, the data availability layer and consensus was separated. The execution layer and the settlement still relying on Ethereum. So we've seen the rollups are the execution layer. So the data availability layer, we have key players like Celestia, Avail, EigenDA, even I think recently OG Labs joined the game as well. So in the settlement layer, Ethereum is acting at the settlement layer. So even as we go over the stack, we've had L3s. So even the L3s can settle on L2s at the settlement layer. Like when it comes to Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova acts as the settlement layer for L3s. We've also seen that on Base, Optimism, as well. And like he added on other chains like Hinachia, even working on their own. So also the important parts of the modular component, I think the most important one, which is the framework. Like I feel the framework is like the skeletal structure needed, like that serves as the backbone to build all these modular components on top, just like let's say the chassis of a car. So yeah, I would say it's the framework. So when you come, you can put in the doors, the windshield, everything. So these are the other components that are added. So I would even call those ones like, so many several components like all these interop, proving shared sequencing, like we've seen with Espresso, Astria, Reduce, improving. We've seen the likes of Nebra, Herodotus, so many of them. So also we've seen in Interop like Union what they are doing, and so many of them. So even RUAS, Rollups as a service provider, which has some skin to the game of making it so easier to deploy, to spin up your rollup in a matter of minutes, without even having to handle it. They do everything in the back end for you, and you just pay for the charges for the uptime and the rest. So yeah, these are some of the important stacks of the modularity.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe let's take a more myopic view, or at least more microscopic view, dig into one of the stack functionalities that's near and dear to my heart, which is data availability. And this could be open to anyone. What are the differences between DA layers and their functionality? I'd love to talk through the pros and cons of each, and really analyze the question, is there even a best solution where one size fits all, or is there going to be many that work with various projects across all the different stacks? And I could put it out to anybody here.
That's for Prabal, or else I'm gonna make. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot, and you'll have to correct me. Okay?
Do it.
All right. So here we go. We're getting a little technical here. All right. So I guess let's start with Avail itself. So Avail has an interesting kind of way of doing data availability based basically Avail is going to use ZK-based proofs to build these things called KZG commitments, which are like these polynomial schemes, which verify which are verified via light clients, and then are basically able to verifiably prove that the data is in fact published and posted basically to the Avail chain, and then to Ethereum itself. And so this is like a more intricate model than some of the other solutions that are out there, because they haven't used polynomial schemes yet, because it took a long time to develop them, if I understand that correctly. And so that's kind of like the Avail scheme. I'm sure there's something that I missed. Celestia has kind of taken I guess a faster to market, but a less sophisticated approach, where just using light clients and Reed and Solomon erasure coding basically to create random samples of a block. So a block comes and the light clients are able to verify that the data is in fact correct. They can kind of gossip amongst each other that this is correct and that it's been posted back to the L1. Celestia uses fraud proofs, which is a bit different than kind of like the ZK operation. And then you have EigenLayer, which is more similar to Avail, but uses validity proofs as well, but I don't think they have KZG or polynomial quite yet, or there's some kind of mix there. And so I guess the main trade-off, from what I understand, is Celestia was quicker to get to market because they didn't use polynomial and KZG, which requires, from what I understand, more developer tooling. But as soon as it's figured out, I think they will be forced to switch to this, or at least adopt if they aren't already working on it now, because it is a more verifiable way to do data availability and data availability sampling. And then I think I guess that's the only trade-off that I know. Prabal, please.
Yeah, dude, you're hired. That was a great explanation. And probably maybe getting your thoughts. One thing that is a big difference, I'd say, is data availability committees versus sampling. Can you talk about like who uses what and why, and the pros and cons of each a little bit?
Yeah, I think before I start answering, like I think you asked like which is whether there is a clear best implementation or not. Of course, I have to say that Avail is the best implementation. But all that aside, I think it's about trade-offs, right? So each one of them are being built by fantastic teams. I'm sure like all the other teams are really, really good. We have very good relations, like they are fantastic people, right? So they are not just taking a trade-off or a particular design choice because it's and it can be bad, right? So the trade-offs, actually Andy covered it very, very well, right? So roughly speaking, like there is a data availability committee kind of an aspect, which was there much before DA layers came into production, right? So for example, Arbitrum had it, Starkware had it when they launched very, very early. So they already had data availability committees. The problem with the committee is that it's a very closed loop of people who have only signed, and they have nothing at stake, to be very, very honest. Like it's just a group of people who came together and have signed, some of them, maybe super majority of them, or whatever the logic of the DA check is, and they just give an assertion that the data is available. For a party who is outside of it, because data availability is such hard a problem to catch or to prove on chain, it becomes extremely tricky for someone to prove otherwise when there is a committee involved. And that's why we need full-blown layer ones like Avail and Celestia and others who can have not only cryptographic, because cryptography is not enough to solve everything about the data availability problem. And that's why you need both cryptoeconomics and cryptography to come together. And that's how you provide guarantees about data availability. Now, coming towards the trade-offs that people have been taking, I think, there are fraud-proof based techniques, and then there are validity-proof based techniques. And we all know the rough mental model that we have from rollups are quite similar and quite analogous to how we see for DA landscape as well. It is that the optimistic protocols are much faster to give assertions, and then have much later, or there is a challenge period that you need to wait for to get the final guarantees, right? So that's roughly the mental model which also carries forward to the DA layer. I think because we use validity proofs, as soon as you are running a light client and you have done your sampling, you have done your bit of verification, you can be, very, very confident that the data is actually available. Whereas in optimistic constructions, even after you do the sampling, the guarantees can still be reverted if someone finds a fault and gives and propagates a fraud proof. There are other problems also, which again going towards network topology, crypto economic guarantees, and things like that. There's some things like verifier's dilemma and so on, which I'm not going into the game theoretic aspects. But if you look at a design like a eigenlayer design, they take a much different approach. They use the crypto economics of a restaked asset, but there also they are essentially running a committee. They put up a collection of people who have had restaked assets, the operators, and then they rely that the operators are doing it correctly. There is no data availability sampling, which means that the end user verifiability is extremely weak in these kind of designs. But that comes with sufficient, upsides on the other hand, where they can have a dispersal kind of a model, which is heavily centralized, can be made decentralized, and then going ahead with it. There is also, talk about slashing, about how you can do, slashing of intersubjective, like faults and so on and so forth, which are yet to be implemented and seen in production, but I'm very sure that they will come ahead and open up the design space. So roughly speaking, this is all about modularity, as Saint and Andy was talking about, right? That it leads to experimentation, it leads to newer design choices, it leads to more options for the people, and that's where people with different trade-offs can all coincide.
I have one follow-up question there on optimistic chains based on orbit, no P. I've heard that they can be less expensive, and I have heard that the computational requirements of ZK, especially in the past, can be more expensive. With things, the condensation, I guess, or the making things smaller from like Plonky 1, 2 to 3, it just continually condenses. Is it at a place where it's comparable, or do you think ZK will always potentially be more expensive to compute versus optimistic?
It will theoretically be always more expensive. Like there is no way. I mean, you can prove a theorem that it will always be more expensive. That's how it is, right? So that is true. But at the same time, we have to take things in perspective with practical implementations. Like, for example, is it is AI fast? There is no real answer to it, right? It's come down to such performance levels that it is almost good enough for everyone. You type in a question, you get back the answer. That's the feedback that you want. Is Spotify streaming fast enough? Do you get immediate playing? It almost sounds immediate, and that's why it is good enough. So there also, I think right now, the point is not yet there where it is almost immediate, that the finality guarantees, that the assertion guarantees, that the proofs are generated almost instantly. It is not the case. And optimistic is always going to be, it is like you are assuming it to be correct unless it is proven otherwise. So assuming it to be correct is almost instantaneous. So it's going to be cheaper, but the delta is going to be lower and lower to the point where it is almost comparable.
Yeah, and Prabal, I was on a pod with Brendan Farmer, and I think we asked him a similar question, and he had an interesting response that was quite similar that I think that you'll appreciate, which is, we asked him about the same thing about costs for proof generation and verification, as well as cost of transactions on ZK rollups versus optimistic rollups. And if you actually look into the data of the amount of fees that users have paid to swiftly withdraw from optimistic rollups via third-party bridges, compared to the fees of a ZK rollup with a basically, you know, like an instant finality and like a 15 to 30 minute withdrawal period with very minimal fees, it's actually like an order of magnitude more expensive from comparing that to the ZK rollup. And then also a more like abstract point of thought was, if you think about the opportunity cost and the capital efficiency cost of operating your capital on a less efficient kind of system as well, then there's also like a differential there in productivity. And so those are some really interesting points that people don't really associate with. But now that ZK costs are coming down significantly, it starts to become more apparent just on the bridging itself, let alone the other kind of hidden costs of optimistic verification.
That's cool. I hadn't thought of it or heard of it that way. I'd love to see some of those numbers. But we got some time left. I want to make sure we continue moving along, maybe moving away from DA. And now we have this new paradigm popping up in the space at a pretty blistering pace, which is Bitcoin layer 2s. It took years for 100 potential EVM layer 2s to pop up and get going. Now it seems like we have 100 Bitcoin layer 2s over the past couple quarters, which is crazy. How are you all seeing the Bitcoin layer 2 space build out? Like, what kind of use cases are there so far in the space? What's it looking like to you? And maybe start with you, Saint, on the layer 2 side, what you're seeing in the rollups, and then we move to some other ideas.
All right, yeah, you know, it just started with Ethereum L2s. So yeah, we've been seeing many of them starting from both optimistic and ZK side. Yeah, soon we've also been seeing hybrid, just like Morph. Then from there we can see, yeah, as the Bitcoin DeFi someone started hitting up, so many Bitcoin L2s started emerging. So like there isn't any much different on what L2s are. Everybody knows what L2 is, you know. So it's just kind of like alleviating the whole stress of the base layer. So yeah, but so many Bitcoin L2s has been emerging. So like we've seen some like the Medellin chain, so many of them. I think by far now Medellin chain is the highest with the total number of the by TVL. So yeah, although I haven't really looked into Bitcoin L2s, but I feel like there isn't any much difference from what Ethereum L2s are, but they are trying so hard to achieve what has already been there on Ethereum. So yeah, I don't think there is nothing much there.
What do you think, Andy? Have you seen anything in the Bitcoin layer 2 space? Do you have any insight of what's being built? Is it all DeFi and just unlocking value, or is there something else?
Yeah, I mean, we just did 3 weeks of interactive, high-level technical presentations. So I'm about tired of talking about Bitcoin L2s for a little bit of time. But yes, I do have some thoughts, and I'll try to summarize all of them into like where we are and get everybody up to speed. So basically, Bitcoin scaling is at a really interesting spot where we've had the advent of a lot of these side chains that have come up with their own alternative consensus. So basically, they all have their own coin, but there's a couple ways to use Bitcoin's hash power and consensus to reach a Bitcoin scaling solution. And I'll kind of come back to the terminology. And so there's this idea of merge mining, where you use Bitcoin miners to effectively contribute hash power to your chain, but you also have your own proof of stake consensus or delegated proof of stake consensus, and kind of combine these both to use the miners for some sort of verification process. Then you have chains that are trying to build like an actual rollup on top of Bitcoin itself. But the problem is there is a lack of expressivity on the Bitcoin L1, where there's not really much data availability capabilities. The blocks are every 10 minutes. I think they're 4 megabits per block. So it's extremely, extremely limited. So wink, wink, Avail hopefully gets over there and gets in there and helps out. And so that kind of process of building a rollup hasn't been possible because you need a a bilateral bridge from L1 to L2, and right now there's a bit VM that is kind of in the works, but it's missing this ZK verifier basically. And so in order for the ZK verifier to get through, we have to actually go back and pass a opcode in the Bitcoin script called opcat. And opcat effectively allows for a little bit more expressivity on the base layer. But the key thing is that the Bitcoin community is very worried about scaling the base layer too much to have MEV on the L1. Because if there's going to be MEV on the L1, then it kind of can centralize the miners. And basically those with the most capital or with the most tech can win, and kind of it can harm the Bitcoin network. So opcat is still kind of trying to get passed through. And right now, what we have is a lot of like kind of side chains, and then L2s that are using either a committee for data availability, or they're kind of built on a multi-sig right now, trying to get to the full either Validium or Volition route, or eventually some are even trying to do full ZK rollup. So that's kind of like the speed run as to where we're at. So I think a lot of these teams are kind of like in a standstill trying to get this opcat opcode passed, which would actually require a soft fork. So there's quite a bit of social consensus that would go into that. And fun fact, Satoshi actually first built Bitcoin in Bitcoin script with that opcode in it, but then decided to take it out for some reason. And he also took out 7 opcodes, one being a multiply one, which has some other importance. And so there's no like kind of idea as to why. But if you look at his update in GitHub, it just says like miscellaneous updates, and then it was just taken out. And so that's kind of the speed run as to where Bitcoin L2s are, from my understanding over the last couple of weeks.
I love it, and I didn't know that opcat tidbit right there, so I appreciate it. Prabal, last follow-up question here. We have one more question. We're running out of time. I don't want to take you too much of you guys' time. What other hurdles are there when dealing with Bitcoin as a layer 2? And I'm thinking of, obviously the ZK aspect is important, but what about bridging, right? What does that really mean to truly bridge Bitcoin out and to bridge data attestations over to there, so it sits there, so it's the settlement layer with the source of truth of all the transaction data and/or state changes?
No, I think Andy really summed it up very, very well, right? I mean, there is a lot of effort and initiative, which is always a good thing to have. But there is still the final mile is missing, because there is so much work that can be done on the layer on top, but the base layer needs to have a minimum functionality supported for things to be trust minimized. Now, there is a lot of different L2s which are coming up on Bitcoin, and all of them claim to be as the most trust minimized and such. Each one of them have their catch of their own, but what all of this will propel is towards Bitcoin community is having to rethink. I think after a very, very long time, something like this is being considered very, very seriously, because there's so much of capital inflow, there's so much of user and dev initiative which is being taken. I think it just shows on to say that there's a real need there. In terms of bridging, also there are different constructions that I have seen. Of course, not maybe to the level where Andy did, but there are a couple of them which I really like. Like, for example, there are things where you have a multi-sig based experience, but one of the key catches is that the user always has to agree. So it's just that the multi-sig cannot unilaterally spend your funds or bridge your assets and things like that, right? So there are these kind of constructions which at least have caught my eye. And then there are other constructions where uh, it can be as trust minimized as the layers that you are talking about. So if we are talking about 2 side chains bridging Bitcoin assets, then it can be as secure as the side chains or the minimum of the side chain security themselves. And then there are plenty of constructions that are there. Like, I mean, Ethereum rollups have shown the way how 2 rollups can interact, but there are many other things which, for example, we as Avail Nexus are doing, which are applicable to Bitcoin rollups as well. And those are the kind of places where we are seeing a lot of interest from the Bitcoin rollup ecosystem who want to tag along on the Nexus part, not just on the DA side, but also on the Nexus side because of proof aggregation and trust minimized interaction. So those kind of things are there. But again, I still think that the last mile is missing. But I'm very, very hopeful that it is going to come because Bitcoin can really change the way the entire game is seen right now.
Yeah, for sure. So second to last question here before we close it out. What is one thing each of you is either really excited about launching that's being worked on? So really, I'm looking at the problems. What problem are you really excited about being solved? Or what problem do you see is not solved and nothing else is really working on it yet? So therefore, it's the biggest opportunity to go build one of the next biggest pieces of tooling and so on. So I'd love from each of you. I know it's a tricky question. So either something, the biggest problem that's potentially being solved and could, let's say, launch during this cycle's technology advancements, or something that hasn't been solved, hasn't been worked on yet, that you'd love to see someone solved over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I'm hearing that Avail mainnet is pretty soon, so pretty excited for that one. I think I stole that one from Prabal, so he has to think of something different now. So sorry for that. But I would say, in addition to Avail mainnet, chain abstraction I think is super cool. Like solving this world where, okay, we have all these modular chains, these app chains. And I've kind of been thinking, do we really need to build all these different bridges and interoperability solutions? What if we could just build an experience that is a experience where users can feel like they're just on one chain, but they are actually interacting with a ton of different ones? But then I'm like, okay, well, we need interoperability solutions under that to kind of like power this. And so both the chain abstraction projects that get the most product market fit on the account level, and those which do the best job on kind of not the blockchain level as well, like AgLayer, Avail Nexus, Omni Network, Union, all these different projects. Like that's what I'm super excited for, because I feel like that's gonna like put all these puzzle pieces together and kind of make that unified experience where you get all of the benefits of being in your own sovereign block space, but you can also get all the benefits of feeling like you're on a monolithic or an integrated chain. And so that's where my head has been for the last couple of weeks.
For sure, I agree, man. It's exciting.
All right, so I'm going to key in here. Just like Amdi said, lots of problems have been solved, honestly, but the most important ones which has always been there, and we keep on being there, and that is what is really limiting us to mass adoption. So it all lies in unification, whichever way, starting from account abstraction, chain abstraction, the use of intents, and just like what Avail is trying to solve as well, and not just the DA side, the Avail Nexus and Fusion, also the AgLayer, the Omni Octane, also recently what Fluent are doing with the blended VMs, trying to unify VMs. So I feel like, yeah, unification is a major problem, and once it's solved, I think half of the problem in this industry is going to solve, because yeah, it's going to aid in seamless user experience as well, and not just on the user side, but on the developer side as well. And me too, I'm working on a project which Andy knows about, yeah, but kind of still in stealth mode, which is going to equally solve a major problem there in the modular landscape, especially when it comes to the builder side. It's going to connect all frameworks, and RAS is a modular marketplace. Yeah, so I feel like that's all I have to add now for it.
Nice, man. Never be afraid of giving alpha here. This is a very comfortable space. We'll accept anything you throw out there. Probably bring out the rear.
Prabal, never be afraid of giving alpha, Prabal.
Yeah.
They just keep asking me. Come on.
Cannot drop that alpha here. But I think see the kind of applications which you guys already talked about really agree there. Uh, I want to talk about two things which probably should not be Avail aligned because, of course, I think that the problems that we are solving are the big ones. But apart from that, what are the other ones which are being solved? In my opinion, I think custom rollups are something which are there, but still haven't seen very good adoption or developer tooling or like deployments and such. What I mean by that is custom state, custom transaction structure, everything custom, a rollup which doesn't have to do anything which is general purpose, which has all the EVM or SVM or any kind of VM baggage. That is something which will change the way we see rollups. We will start seeing rollups as mode of verifiable computation. We will start seeing rollups as microservices. Teams are building, and I'm very, very bullish on the teams which come ahead and show the world what kind of rollups can exist. They do not have to be all the general purpose ones which lead to fragmentation and such, but there can also be application specific rollups which has to happen in this industry for these rollups to thrive. That's one thing that I'm very bullish that people are already building on, and it will solve a lot of things. Something that people are not building, and this is probably a hot take live, so this is a hotter take. I think applications. So I'm not very, very happy with the state of the applications that we are building to this space. Of course, I'm trying to contribute more on the infra side, but on the application side also, there is so much trust minimized interactions that we can enable through this industry. The infra is there. I mean, other like it's there or it's going to be there very, very soon. I think fundamentally new things are getting built on the infra side, but on the app side, I am yet to see the next wave of applications which are going to take over, which are going to completely change and have a very, very strong value proposition, which is going to see a very good product market fit, which is going to change human interactions how we know it. And blockchains are capable of doing it. That's why we all are in this space, right? That it can fundamentally change human values. But there, I think a lot of different work is still something that we are yet to see a lot of them. So that's yeah.
Awesome. Awesome thoughts. This has been a really good time. And I think we've hit a lot of really cool topics across the space. Maybe last thing before we close out, where can everyone go to learn more about all you're building, all you're doing? What should they follow in your ecosystem and so on? If you could give a little shout out. Open it up to anyone.
Yeah. All right. So for me, my media is out there in public, which is on my bio, layer 2M. So everything about layer 2s and modularity, but more of modularity. So Andy even knows too. So yeah, from their ecosystem rollup map. So every week I go there to cover every important recap that is happening in the modularity landscape, starting from the first component there, covering almost all of them. So yeah, I feel like with constant following, because there are so many things happening in this industry, the pace at which everything moves fast, like you can really, keep up with that. So yeah, but we layer 2M, you are going to keep up with that. And also Celestia, they are doing an amazing job every week to always make sure it reach out to the masses by retweeting them from their official handle, So I feel like if a lot of the modular projects do that as well, so it's going to be the go-to media for everything recap. So the users out there, we see what is happening in the modularity landscape.
Awesome. Andy, Prabal?
Yeah, I have my Twitter handle right here somewhere. You can find us at the Rollup. Come say hi at ECC. Looking forward to seeing you guys out there, all of you guys, hopefully. And yeah, thank you for the time and for coming on. And I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think for us, follow Avail project on Twitter, check out our GitHub, Discord. check out our website. All the links are there. My Twitter handle is this one, but it's the least interesting of all of people who are here. So that's me. But also, we are open for developer grants. We have an Avail Uncharted program. So if you're a dev looking to join in this modular journey with various projects which are under the Avail umbrella, so please come and check them out. So yep, and come say hi on Hot Take series during HCC and the various other events that are happening all across.
Yep. We also have a Unification Cup, which is a football/soccer tournament, and there's going to be a bunch of people beating me, making me look like an old man that I am. So really excited to see everyone out there, have drinks. And either way, that's a wrap, everybody. Thanks so much for coming to chat, fellows. I love the conversation. To everyone listening live or in the future, thanks for tuning in, and hope you all have a great rest of the week.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
There,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. Yeah. Bye bye.